So we know that these structures, potentially mineralized structures, keep going on for kilometer and kilometer. And once again, this is why we're saying we don't just have a discovery, we have a new trend.
Eminent Gold is targeting large-scale, high-quality gold deposits in Nevada, with 3 highly prospective projects in the Great Basin. CEO Dan McCoy and strategic advisor Ivan Bebek are here to tell us why their Nevada projects are so promising. Please remember, this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here.
All right, good seeing you again, Ivan. Ivan, you just joined Eminent Gold as strategic advisor. You both actually have quite a track record together. It looks like the band is back together here. So, Ivan, why don't you give us a little introduction on what brought you back here with Dan and what you and your role at Eminent Gold and the prospects you see?
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, it's a Nevada gold story. Those of you who know my track record, I got involved with Gold Standard partway through my career, where they had the North Dark Star discovery. I think every true exploration wants to find a major gold mine in Nevada. And Dan and I have had tremendous success from the beginning of my career in Ghana, West Africa, with a 5 million ounce discovery and then the sale of Caden. Once we got to the point of ore and Dan took a break, took a hiatus. He had given us about 10 years of his life and living in Africa and Mexico. And he came back with one more left in the tank. And he said to me, look, Ivan, I've got one left. And so, we formed this company, and it was a lot of risk and a lot of idea, a lot of vision. And, I love to say Dan's a very lucky geologist, because he is, and that's important, is more important than being smart sometimes. But it's together we've had incredible achievements, and Dan got onto this portfolio that he assembled with a group of very smart geos, and it made a lot of sense to me early because I have a higher risk threshold than most investors do. I love the early stage projects, but when Eminent drilled the last intercept, 9 meters of about 3 grams. It was the 4th gold and a very new and a very, very big concept of a brand new oxide Carlin discovery in Nevada. So I was a large investor. I was financing the company personally a lot. And finally, it came to a point where I really feel this discovery's got legs and it could go. And seeing the endorsement of Kinross as that hole came in and continues to improve the technical outcome of this project, it really just felt like a fitting time to bring in my expertise, which is the monetization and the strategic, coordination of how we monetize this with the corporates. And so far, Kinross there is an amazing endorsement, but the real magic is with Dan and his team. And today you're going to get a chance to hear why I'm super enthusiastic and why I've made the move to be a lot more publicly associated with Eminent. But all of what we talk about today, all the joy, it's one of 3 assets that we're exploring so far. And the other 2 could ring the bell just as loud as the first one. So this is the best positioned gold junior for a major discovery that I'm aware of in the business right now, and I'm very proud to be involved with it. But that's my intro, and I'll hand it back to you, Martin.
All right, thanks, Ivan. Dan, we've got the deck up here. Why don't you walk us through the story and give us an overview on Eminent Gold, and then we can dig into various aspects of the projects and the company and the team.
Fantastic. Thank you, Martin. And it's really nice to be working with Ivan again, like really nice. So at any rate, I've got essentially 3 takeaways I'd like people to get from this presentation. We're looking at here, we're looking at actually the drill as it's drilling our intercept. So the drill is sitting right here in this picture. It's sitting on our Otis part of our HSRP project. And basically, I think the 3 takeaways is that we have a new Carlin trend discovery in Nevada. We firmly believe that, and I'll show you the reasons why we believe it. It's both field work and as well as eventually drilling that showed us what we potentially have. And it's been very exciting because we're actually at each point of this process, we have more and more evidence that yes, this is likely to be the next big Carlin type gold trend in Nevada. The second point is we're going to talk a little bit about celts, Our Seltz project is the same idea, but in a different part of Nevada and a different project type. But it is an exact look-alike for the silicon deposit. In fact, it was brought to us by the same people who found silicon and sold it to Anglo-American. And the third one is a point that Ivan already made, and is that we have the background, we have the people, and we have the leverage and the share structure, and that's all stuff Ivan's going to talk about. But it's all that stuff will help us monetize this. And now that Ivan is back with us, I just think I'm just as happy as can be. So
Dan, sorry. So I like what when we were talking before. You're the rocks guy and Ivan's the stocks guy.
Yeah, we're twins that don't look alike. We're fraternal.
All right.
I'm rocks and he's stocks.
All right.
So I'll be talking mostly about rocks, and then Ivan will come back on and talk about stocks. So the disclaimer: we're an early stage exploration company. Lots of forward-looking statements that goes with the business. So once again, this is just to kind of reiterate what Ivan talked about. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. Keegan happened. I was working for Placer Dome. Ivan was my first introduction into the juniors, and he was kind of just starting out as well. And I was the original president CEO of Keegan, and that we hit a really good market with discovery at the same time, what you want to do. And we had an 18 times return. The second company, Ivan took over as the president and CEO. I moved to chief geologist. We were both directors, of course. And Ivan just did a fantastic job. I think this buyout by Agnico Eagle was masterful that he did. And it wasn't as good a market, yet we still saw good monetization, even though we didn't have a great market. So there's some other members of our team. Michael is he's a serious part of the glue that holds our team together. He worked with us with Keegan, and then he came over. He worked for a while as a broker with Haywood, and he got a lot of good experience with that. And then he's come on as our head of communications. He saw what we were doing, and he was like, I want to get back into this. So he was very excited about what we had and decided to come back and be our head of communications. Martin Bajic is a very experienced CFO. Jim Slayton has been with us all the way through too. He's our project manager. He's a Nevada native. He's the only geologist I know who introduces himself with howdy. And he's a complete logistics guy. Your field work is safe with him managing it. So once again, we are going to talk just briefly about all three projects, but we're going to spend the amount of time on them that is basically how much time we're spending and how much money we're spending on them in the field. So I'll talk about Hot Springs the most. I'll talk about Seltz a little bit. We'll mention Gilbert South. Gilbert South, we're not planning on drilling this year. We have some acquisitions we'd like to do before we work on it again. So moving along. So why Carlin deposits? And this might be, I might be talking to the choir for a lot of your listeners, because most people who are into gold know about Carlin deposits. First of all, Nevada is the second highest rated venue in the world. And it's mainly because of Carlin deposits. Carlin deposits, it's not rocket science. They're big and they're high grade, and they occur in trends. So once you find one of them, it's very likely you're going to be able to step out and find another one. A lot of the ones that were completely exposed have already been discovered. Ours is partially covered, just covered enough that it wasn't found yet. And so we'll see in a short while why Carlin deposits are what they are, what makes them what they are. That's the next thing we'll be talking about. This is a predictive mineral model that's been around for 25 years. And that's why it amazed me when this project came our way. I was like, wait a minute, people knew of the potential of this 25 years ago and no one worked on it. No drill holes, no samples that we know about. And fortunately, our the people who prospect generators who brought this to and who we had an option with, a couple named Justin and Ajit Miller, brought this project to us. They were graduate students. They saw the potential of the area. And more importantly, they had learned something very important, and that is that you can still see the structures that form Carlin deposits. You can still see them, even though they're in post-mineral rock. And that's because Nevada has been seismically active and structurally active. It's been seismically active for the last 400 million years. So there's been constant activity. And what happens is these structures that the fluids come up, you see them occur over and over and over again. They get reactivated. And so what our students did was they went out and they looked at some air photos of the Getchell trend, the 50 million ounce Getchell trend. They found air photos that showed where these structures were before it was mined. And what they found was that these intersections of northwest and north-south and northeast, the northeast structures are the most important, and the trend itself is northeast oriented. They found out that where these intersections were was where you had Turquoise Ridge. And we were talking about now almost a 50 million ounce endowment. And then also the Twin Creeks project, two of the best deposits in the world, really. And so then they looked at our hot springs and they saw, well, wait a minute, we have these same structures. We have these intersecting northwest and northeast structures. So we were like, wow, this is really great. So our next slide, we're going to look at a long section. So if you look here at hot springs, here's our northeast structure. Here's our northwest structures. If you look at Turquoise Ridge and the Getchell trend, here's our kind of like basically northwest, north-south structures. Here's our northeast structures. So now we're going to look at that in long section. And this is good. I think this slide is really important because what it shows us is the three things you really need to have a Carlin system. You've got to have the deep penetrating structures. Gold travels in fluids. It travels in very hot fluids, and these fluids come up these deep structures. And what they do is they hit a good host rock. To have a good host rock, you not only need to have you need to have some limestone. In the case of both Turquoise Ridge and Hot Springs Range, you have some basalt that's in there as well. And so you need to have that. So you've got the deep structures, you've got the good host rock. We have different age host rocks, but they're both very similar compositionally wise. And then you need to have these thrust faults that tear these rocks apart and make them amenable to fluids coming in. So this was all well and good. I was like really happy to see at the beginning to see these faults in their photos, but we needed a little bit more confirmation than that. And so we did a gravity study, and now gravity study is going to be looking deep, and it's going to be, do we really have these long structures? And we do. So particularly the northeast ones, which are the most important ones. But what we can see is we have these deep structures, and they go all the way out. You can see some of those kind of north-south structures out in our Eden area. So this area right here is our where we're drilling right now, the Otis area. The Eden area we'll be drilling later. We'll talk about that soon. Any rate, we've also found a couple of other really interesting gravity anomalies. We've got a buried intrusion, which almost every Carlin system's got buried intrusion or, nearby. So at any rate, we're seeing all the signs that we want to see from the gravity. So the next step, of course, is now, let's prove that there's actually some gold there. So we went out and we did a pretty extensive soil survey over the Eden area. Now, I'm not going to go through all these rock types on this geologic map. There's only two rock types you really need to know about. One is, where are we finding all the gold right at surface? And that's in this Mississippian home ranch terrain, which I mentioned in the previous slide, consists of both basalt and limestone, the two ingredients we're looking for. The other rock is basically post-mineral rock. So this brown section right here, this is post-mineral. It covers up the mineralization. Yet we're still seeing these structures. We're still seeing them both in the air photos and we're seeing them in the gravity. So we know that these structures, potentially mineralized structures, keep going on for kilometer and kilometer. And once again, this is why we're saying we don't just have a discovery, we have a new trend. And so you see that again out in the Eden area. Now, in the case of Eden, we didn't have, in the case of Eden, we didn't actually have syn mineral or pre-mineral rock. So what we did was we did a type of pediment sampling where we just sampled right along the structure just to see if there's devolatilizing gold and pathfinder elements coming up from the buried depths where we think the gold deposit really is. So now we're zeroing in a little bit. Here's our really good host rock. So we got this really good host rock that we got very good numbers out of. The dark blue is the volcanics. You can see the light blue is the limestone. This used to be pretty evenly bedded, but you see how ripped and torn and folded it is, and that's because of the thrust faulting. So even before the Carlin fluids hit this rock, it was really, really crunched up and folded and mineralized. So what we found, though, is that we did what's called CSAFT, and we'll see that in the next slide. What we found is that the better structures were actually under this brown post-mineral rock. So the brown post, and it's probably a good thing that they were, because if it hadn't been covered up by post-mineral cover, some prospector might have found it. They might have found, 9 meters of 9.2 meters of 3.2 meters right at the surface, right? And it would already be a Carlin trend, right? It would already have mines all along it. So the fact that it was covered was really good for us. Keep in mind, we're going to be looking at a section that goes from A to A prime, and we're looking at 2 faults. So we've got 4 complete drill holes. They've encountered 2 faults. One is the Otis fault. The other is the Little Humboldt fault. CSAM.
Dan, the cover, the post mineralized cover there, roughly how thick is that? You said it was.
You can kind of see that a little. You can see that pretty good. It's very conductive. So we put a shock into the rock. That's what CSAMT is. It's a kind of a form of IP where you essentially electrocute the rock, and what you get is, I call it a rock CAT scan. So it gives you a feel for what's there and how deep it is. The post mineral cover you can see in the very, very white up towards the top and the high pink. That's the basalt. So the basalt is about, I'm guessing it's about, on average, about maybe 80 meters thick. It's not super thick, right?
All right.
It's just barely covering it. It's a flow basalt, so it just flowed over the landscape, and it's not particularly thick. And so as soon as we got out of the basalt, we of course started hitting some gold. And so hitting this gold basically gave us the confirmation that we needed. What we found out that we've got a mineralized system, and it's a Carlin mineralized system, and we've hit on every hole. So not only hit on the Otis fault, but we've hit on this northwest structure. And so now that's the final confirmation, along with all this field stuff that shows us the extent of these mineralized structures, that shows us that we've got a tiger by the tail. And so
just a comment here, Dan, on my end, just to interrupt for a moment. For the generalists out there, when Dan talks about structures, he's talking about plumbing, like pipes. And what he showed you earlier was the plumbing is very similar in scale to the Getchell trend, which is the first major check mark. To come up and drill 4 holes and hit gold, as you're seeing here, in all 4 holes in a row, on a brand new thesis, a brand new idea on something that's never been drilled in an area in Nevada that's never been explored, the odds of that are beyond 1 in 10,000 to come out and do this. Not that we hit gold, because that happens, to hit it early, but to hit it in all 4 holes on 2 different areas that we drilled. So the odds of that are outstanding. A lot of people ask me in my career that I meet along the way, how do you find a gold mine? I think this is a perfect educational process of how that works. And the last point I'll make is, when we talk about Carlin systems, and Dan's talked about the Carlin trend, and finding a Carlin trend, this is some of the largest gold trends in the world, and one hasn't been found like this in decades. So it has a chance to be something in the 20 to 50 million ounce range if we get this right on all the targets that exist on this trend. And that's where things start to really make sense. And Martin, you asked me why I joined it and what I was looking for outside of the first 3 holes, which drew in Kinross's early interest because they started to see the gold show up, was seeing that consecutive 9 meters of 3 grams, which Dan's going to talk about how important that was here in the next slide or two when he shows the core.
Yeah, so exactly. Great lead in, Ivan. Because when we look at the core, what we see is like the highest grade comes from the areas where we don't have any quartz veins. We think the quartz veins are not important in Carlin systems. It's the disseminated mineralization that's important. And so, we actually have better grades in the rocks that don't have quartz veins. And what we see is really, really even grade distribution along this 9 meters. So this is 9.2 meters here. We don't have anything less than a gram. So we're looking at, we know we're looking at a Carlin system. We're looking at a disseminated gold system. Most importantly, it's oxide. And that's what tells us that 3 grams of oxide is really good. I mean, that's what you're looking for. Pipeline, which we showed on a slide before, that's like 15 plus million ounces, and it's running less than 2 grams. So 3 grams is really good grade for oxide. So we're really happy with what we got. But of course, we're greedy and we want more. So as well as following up on our Otis with some RC drilling, which is going to give us faster results, a lot more news flow. We're also going off to Eden because we're really psyched about the Eden target. Like I said, it is all covered. But what we do have is some good CSAMT that tells us where these structures are. We're seeing these same deep penetrating structures. We just need to drill down to where the rock is, where the sin mineralization is. And so we'll be planning on doing that this year as well.
Just a key point before you leave the slide. If you look at the image on the right, all those triangles, you see those represent a very consistent gold endowed in soils along that structure. That is imperative towards a drill target. It's obviously slightly deeper than surface, but seeing that consistently go along that structure is incredible for a drill target. And so far we're into Otis. This is the second target, Eden. It'll go from a discovery to a trend once you get the second one, as Dan commented earlier. But the robust nature of these targets and the fact of the way that pieces are fitting together geologically and structurally is incredible. Like that, to have these kind of targets at $5,500 gold going higher, it's just really unheard of. But carry on, Dan.
Very excellent, Ivan. Yeah, that's really good points. I mean, that's incredible. But a lot of people, geologists who look at the slide, they're like, wait a minute, you're getting gold in rocks that are post-mineral that don't have any gold in them? I'm like, yeah. That's because of the constant reactivation of these faults, that you're getting fluids that have little bits of gold in pathfinders. So moving along, now we're going to move to cells. So I'm going to talk, we just got a couple slides about cells. Now, cells is a very different kind of deposit. It's one of these deposits that were formed not very long ago and right at the surface. And what you're looking for in these kinds of deposits is you're looking for a volcano, essentially, what we call a rhyolite dome, which is a kind of volcano. So you're looking for a volcano that comes up. The fluids that carried the gold were following the same pathways as the volcano. So what we see when we look at this on the top, we're looking at the silicon discovery. For one thing, gold doesn't reach the surface because the water table didn't reach the surface. The water didn't reach the surface. But what did reach the surface was steam. And that steam shows you that you've got water below. The steam is coming up. It's destroying the rock. It's making a silica cap. It's dropping all these clays out. And so what you have to do is you have to drill down. You have to, drill a hole so where you can get down to where the water table was. And when you look at the holes that Anglo drilled, you can see they're fabulous, right? They're really good. And so the people who brought silicon to Anglo brought cells to us because they saw the same thing. And so what we see at cells is we see the same kind of offset. We've done some IP geophysics, which shows us that there's an offset in some of the beds. And so we're just hoping to repeat that success. We're planning on drilling at least 2 holes there this year. And we've got gold. There actually is gold, but it's not where you wouldn't expect it here. But probably in the water table, there is some high grade gold up to 33 grams per ton that is in some of the veins that are peripheral to this, and so that's also a really good sign.
And just to comment on the size of size of Silicon, Dan, it's what, 12, 13 million ounces?
Yeah,
And it's
it
the
is.
last major discovery in Nevada. So that's another big one, that we'll get to drill this summer.
Exactly. The silicon deposit is surrounded by, and it's not shown here, but it's surrounded by another deposit called the Merlin deposit, which is stratigraphically hosted. And that's kind of what we're hoping for with this layer of basalt, is that it's going to be acting as a cap that's going to give us something similar to Merlin. So, like I said, we're greedy. We want 13 million. We'll take 4, but we're really after 13. So,
And given obviously Nevada is so heavily explored, what was hidden about this? Was it under a cap as well, or why hadn't this target been identified by earlier prospectors?
well, mainly because it didn't have any gold at the surface. So
Okay.
this is actually in, right next to the Goldfields district. It's about half the age of the Goldfields district. There are different events. So people were prospecting all over here, and they did find these veins. And it was interesting because these veins were different than the veins they were looking at, because they're different systems. But they did find and mine these veins. But if they went up to the top of the hill here and took samples, they wouldn't have found any gold, because the water table never reached the surface. So the gold didn't reach the surface. So that's why this one is still in here. So, like I said, Nevada has seen a lot of exploration. It's pretty mature. And that's why finding an oxide Carlin type system is so incredible. And it's only because there was that little bit of cover that covered up
Just a backstory there. A gentleman by the name of Mark Kulba he had mapped steam heated alteration systems in Nevada for 7 years when he discovered silicon and their silicone. And that's the gentleman who kind of, new ideas and new concepts has been the spirit of Hot Springs, the spirit of here in our Gilbert South property. And I think when Nevada had such a big gold rush, Martin, everybody got used to a certain style of deposits and discoveries. Everyone puts it into a box. If it's not there, it's not there. And so, yeah, things got overlooked. Nevada is underexplored in many ways if you apply new concepts to it. But having the courage to go out and do that, this was not an easy company to put together, because it was so greenfields at the beginning, and there was limited, exposure on certain things across Hot Springs. And, the one theme that worked extremely well, and Keegan Caden is also working at Copernico, is each layer of data that we collect improves the target. And that's something I've noticed in my careers of like, how do you know early if you're going to find a mine? I got asked that question the other day. It's when the layers compound, support each other, and you don't go like, oh, good soils, bad geophysics. You go good soils, good geophysics, better structural interpretation. Like, it just keeps increasing. So both of this and Hot Springs Range, not only do they have massive endowment potential, as we're talking about today, collectively north of 50 million ounces. Sounds like a wild card number, but it is the kind of land of where these kind of things can occur. They have the piling evidence from first rock take and first concept that really is driving this home. If you're going to become long and invest in this and be a speculator, you've got to look at what Dan's track record and what he's done as a geologist. And he lives in well, so he knows well. He had worked with Placer and running generative for Placer Dome, running generative in Reno as well. But then pay attention to companies like Kinross that have come in early, and to see their endorsement as early as it is. These are so as targets for majors, everyone juniors, and that's where you're seeing a lot of the early endorsement. And the other question that's going to come out, and 2 holes into this, you can look at the holes drilled at Silicon in the right place. They could give you that parabolic lift, that hockey stick return here and over. So people get excited that Carlin systems require a ton of drilling. They sure do. And these systems here will as well. But if you get that kind of joy that you see on the page at Silicon, or you see in some of the Getchell trend discoveries, you will have a hockey stick return and more money than you could imagine at great share prices going forward. If the gold market wasn't breaking through 5,000 and BMO didn't have a $6,500 call on gold this year and a $7,600 bullish target on gold next year, I'd say, yeah, but tough times, it's going to be expensive. But right now, and we'll talk about finances at the end, it's a situation of having a couple super lotto tickets in the company with 5 or 6 numbers already right. So it's just that last number, do we have it or not? And that's kind of the odds and the risks of where we're at. Carry on, Dan.
Great. And we don't want to forget about Gilbert South, but like I said, we do want to make some more acquisitions here and expand our land package before we drill on it. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with having multiple kilometers of 30 grams per ton in quartz. And what we think is we're looking at again, like looking towards the top of the system, and we need to drill down a little bit deeper to find where these quartz veins all coalesce into hopefully, a Midas or an Aurora style low sulfidation vein type system. And so, we'll hear some more about this as we move forward into the coming years. We'll be back working on this as well. But this year, what we're going to see for our near-term catalysts now is we're going to see quite an extensive drill program, more than we've done before at our Otis project. We're also going to be drilling our Eden project as well. And then we plan to move to Celts and drill there as well. So we've got quite a bit that's going to happen. That just for the listeners who might not know the difference between drilling, we were doing core drilling, which we needed to do to get the information. We needed to see these rocks. We needed to understand why they were where they were. RC drilling is a much faster method. You don't get as much geologic information, but it's faster. You can assay it faster. You can get news out faster. So we're going to be doing a combination where we still need to get more geologic information, such as at Eden, we'll be doing some core, we'll be doing some more core at Otis. But the important thing is we'll be getting results fast when we're doing our RC drilling. And now Rox is going to take a break and hand it over to Stocks.
Yeah, so this company's been around for 5 years. Still shares for range and South. There's a large ownership, as you can see here, by management at 10%. Technical and personal close associates, which is where I fall into, is 32%. I'm a large portion of that. Gold and Kinross, obviously, the company was treasury was quite low, but we announced a stock warrant incentive option in May for the last round of financing we did at 40 cents, which had 70-cent warrants. The news has gone out. I'm not going to be specific on the details of that. The company will be very well funded next week. And then it has dilutables if you look over at the warrants, and they expire in July and September and in August. These will bring in about $5.5–6 million more into the treasury. So that gives the company about $8.5–9 million of cash. That takes us away from having to do a public financing for the rest of the year. Not to say we wouldn't if we did make that hold and see some really good currency in the share price. The way we designed this company, or it was designed, was for a very, very, very robust share price return should a discovery be made. And I'd like to think we're quite be very lucky. Age of all there's so much that's been spent to date to get here. The company has started to perform well. They're run up. They're just investors are slowly starting to get aware of it. I had joined publicly here a moment ago because I see the scale and the size that drives me. I'm a gold bug at heart. To be one of those top 10 world global gold discoveries in one of the best timing of the gold markets in front of us. From a Nevada project, US gold story, there's no shortage of capital. It's early. This is very, very early, and the potential value of what could be worth, I'm not going to speculate on it specifically, but if things continue to work out at the pace they have, and we continue to hit gold at Hot Springs and in the second target at Eden, which both will be drilled here in the not too far future, and if we make the discoveries at Celts, in my view personally, I think this thing could be well into the double digits. It kind of has that appeal of a company that did very well back in the last bull market called Aurelian, which went to about $45 a share, which actually Kinross ended up buying out down in Ecuador. Kinross has been very smart about the positioning. There's a lot of staking that's gone on around our property since we acquired this, not just by ourselves, but Kinross did stake some extra ground, as you saw on the previous map, and other people have gotten a wind of it. This is early. This is big. We're not too worried about the rest of the line because all the gold is on the stuff we're drilling, and that's what's most important to us. We have the heart of it. Not to see other discoveries occur nearby on Spring Spring. For me, coming back after a big discovery had been gone after 5 million ounces with Dan and Caden drilling 100 holes in there that hit gold. The luck that comes between us when we work together on gold projects is done, and it's happening again. Become uncomfortably long this company. A lot of my family is as well, and we think it's there. And now I'm really happy. I did it before I knew that this was going to end up being what it's turned that pivotal corner for me. It's now a discovery expansion story for part of it, and there's some of the biggest gold I'm aware of in one of the best stations in the world. And why is the U.S. that important? Because if you're in tough countries like Africa was tough for us, or in any of the other rural countries that are kind of more challenging with geopolitics, you get a discount. In the case here, you'll get a premium. It's the other side of the equation. So something I've coveted my entire career was to be part of a big gold discovery in Nevada. I had a great return with John Ott and Luke Norman in Gold Standard. That was a great success. But this here looks like it could be something really, really large. And being part of any kind of Carlin discovery or new Carlin trend is once in a career opportunity. So I'm really excited. And that's the end of it from me, Martin. Thank you.
Ivan, thanks. How much, let's say in dollars, how many dollars would you like to invest in the ground in drilling this year? I don't want to say season because in this area of Nevada, you've got drilling year round, right? There's no weather issues affecting you.
Yeah, you can drill year round, Martin. I would love to add 4 or 5 rigs. So permits, we didn't get into too much detail on. Right now, we can drill with a couple rigs in the area we're permitted at Hot Springs. We can also drill souths in the same 12 months. We have made the application for much more advanced permits in the area. It will likely come to fruition January or February or the first quarter of next year. So we have enough runway. If we start getting it, I mean, you can drill as deep as you want, as many holes as you want, but it's the disturbance that becomes the issue. But from that perspective, we're going to scale at the rate of the geology. We're going to go at the pace of what the holes drill and give us. This next phase will be about 10 to 20 holes around Otis and testing Eden as well. That's what we're estimating. It'll be a combination of RC and core. Dan mentioned RC will give us a lot quicker results. So far, we will need core information on new faults, new structures to understand it. But if we can get there a lot faster and quicker and shorten and compress the timeline to discovery, it's going to make the share price perform much more aggressively and draw a lot more attention, a lot more competitive interest beyond Kinross into the story, and the market will start to see it. So any chance we get to speed things up at breakneck speed with intelligent, prudent, and disciplined approach technically, we will do it. But right now, we'll get a rig back out here very shortly within a few weeks. That's the plan. Follow the news, which will lead our financing charge. But again, all those warrants that you saw that are in the month, well in the money, and with the drill turning here in a few weeks, I think that's going to be a lot of people start to speculate again when the drill resumes turning.
All right. So the current warrants you have out, obviously, a lot of them are in friendly hands. The exercise of those is is enough to fund the current plan. If opportunistically a good financing opportunity appears, likely if it would happen sort of on a share price increase on the back of some good news, you could potentially take that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are shareholders first. And we are going to be very, very angular with our approach here because we've done a tremendous job so far. But if we do a couple more good holes, first of all, I think the potential for performance is extremely high based on the scale of what we're talking about. And this would be a first for any junior part of this kind of discovery at this time of this market. And secondly, right comes the right shareholders come. We would do something in motion, but at much higher prices would be our plan. Getting about $8 or $9 million in total from the warrants that's going to come in here in the very near term. It gives us enough meters to drill and holes to drill to get those holes could really give us to where we get a 30 or 40, $50 million raise and be more aggressive with the program. This is very, very key company to have had this kind of success. It's very fortunate support And just to expand a little bit there on that relationship, Kinross's technical team has been second to none working with Dan and our team. As everyone knows, majors have a lot of depth, bench strength at the technical level, and the collaboration has been awesome. It's extremely helpful, and we continue to foster that relationship and grow, but it's a really good value add from their technical team, not just the capital that they put into the company. So I want to make that very clear. We're very appreciative of that as well.
Well, and to editorialize here, given this gold market, given this project, you could raise not unlimited, but as much money as you really needed at any point. You're in a fortunate position where you can juggle it to decide when you want to raise that money. So it's not like you're going to run out of funds and not be able to turn a drill. It's like, how can you maximize or minimize the dilution, maximize the value to shareholders? That's what you're sort of focusing here.
Yeah, it's on the same pace as Keegan, getting to $9. It's in a similar pace, just a much bigger target. So imagine, 5 or 6 of Keegan's discoveries in one company in Nevada, not West Africa, which had its own challenges to draw investors in initially, right? And so, to your point, though, we could be very patient with capital raises. Right now, as we sit here, we have no intention of doing a raise in the next 6 months unless we see exuberant price performance in the share price. And we have enough targets to drill that have enough probability. First 4 holes, that hit rate is unheard of. Usually 2 or 3 hit out of 4 at the max, and that's considered good. But hitting all 4, it just begs to wonder what happens when you step out and you drill continuously, you drill the other structures, you drill near the intrusion, you go drill Eden. Like, these are incredible gold targets. And I know that the investing community wants to wait till there's that magic hole and everything else. That was 30 cents a share. We went up to 87. We're now around 60 to 70 cents a share. But if we make that discovery hole and the next few holes we drill or 10 holes that we're financed to drill, you're going to be looking at us at multi-dollars a share, right? And I'm not encouraging everybody to go bet the bank now and obviously get your own investment advice and do that. But it would be wise to have some exposure as an initial starting position, because this is really, really, really working a lot better than it's reflecting in the current share price. And so, yeah, purpose of this interview with you is to introduce it to people. This is very early. The marketing is starting. But what we've done in all of our companies, and a good question that was asked to me in the last interview that we did recently was, how do I allocate my time? I allocate my time with discovery success. I can monetize drill holes that are hitting or trenches that are pulling, and then there's the general shaping of the companies. I'm a coach for most part, but for me, when I see this kind of geology coming together and I have the comfort level that I do, and I see the endorsement from the majors, not just here, but in my other companies as well, it really drives me and drives the energy. The hardest part of this business, and I can't say it enough, is to find metal, because the easy ones have been found. All the easy mines were found last bull cycles. So this is something incredibly rare. Discoveries are going to be worth a magnitude more, and especially discoveries in great jurisdictions or that have the scale opportunities that this has, and the other companies I'm involved in has as well.
Dan, the Hot Springs project, you've only put in 4 holes into it now, and like, just to emphasize, you those are your first 4 holes, or you hit 4 on each, which is that's remarkable. What are you trying to find out on the next phase of your drilling? Where, maybe if you can show us the map, what structurally, sure, or what is the strategy on the drill program now to prove out a larger picture? Are you just sort of stepping out from where you
Sure.
were? Are you going to go a little further out to try to find some more structural controls? Please explain that.
Sure. For the one thing, we will have a couple of more pads that we're permitting under the existing permit, so that'll give us more angles and more. And we will have, just for anybody who's paying attention, and will be paying attention next week, once we make a release about our next source of funding, we'll also be including a map and some sections that will actually show where these holes are. However, I can use this slide right here to give you some idea. Obviously, we want to follow up on the best result. So we're going to be drilling some more holes into the Little Humboldt Fault. Then I would say, some of the money holes that I'm really excited about is going to be angling at these fault intersections. So we have we're starting to get a handle on the orientation of the faults, the geophysics is helping with that. The gold hits and that, what we see in the core is helping us with this orientation. But I think, we're likely to find some really good mineralization is going to be at some of these fault intersections. So not only will we be stepping out on the Little Humboldt fault, we need to get some more holes in the Otis fault coming at it from a different pad so that we have a better handle. We've been drilling it kind of obliquely. We need to drill it more directly. So we will be doing probably about 7,000 meters of drilling altogether. And so that will give us, quite a bit. That's about 3 times as much as we've done so far as completed holes. So that's going to, that's going to give us a lot of information. About 3.5 times as much drilling as we've done so far. And so once we're done with that, we'll have a really good idea of which structures and which structural intersections have the best results. And we're hoping that program will give us a start of seeing what we might have for like a beginning resource. It's not the most important thing in the world to us to put out a resource, but I think, people want to see that you're putting ounces together. And the fact that we've hit on the first 4 holes, I don't think it's going to be that hard to actually, come up with at least some geometry of what we're looking at.
The faults, the Otis fault and the Little Humboldt fault, where they intersect at the fault intersections, are those opportunities for sort of twice the potential there, where you get flow from 2 systems coming? Are those particular extra good hotspots, so to say?
Exactly, and that's what you see when you look at maps and sections. We, of course, because we're right next to Getchell, and actually Getchell was a Placer Dome project when I was working for Placer Dome, but we're studying Getchell a lot, and that's a key thing, a really key thing, particularly about Turquoise Ridge, is that where you get the intersection of these northeast structures and the northwest or north-south structures, that's where things really, really blow out for exactly the reason that you said. Like you could imagine if you have, Ivan makes a very good analogy with the plumbing analogy. And it's like, okay, so if you got 2 pipes and then you got a place where the 2 pipes come together and, you're going to have twice the water flow. It's not an exact analogy, but it works pretty well.
Just anytime gold travels as a fluid. Dan talked a lot about steam heated and fluids bring gold up. And when it goes up these faults, which are rubbing together, it's one thing. But if you collide rocks, there's an explosion. There's an area where the rocks can break and the fluids can disperse. And then if you look at where we drilled the 9 meters of 3 grams, it's not far off that intersection. So you would just follow that back right across the intersection. I mean, what does the joy look like when you cross some of those intersections? But this thing has both faults that are mineralized, and it has big intersection targets that are matching the same as the neighboring mines, which is really impressive.
Ivan, you mentioned that you've been getting successive positive information. You had an original thesis, and then each bit of data you get, it adds to that. Has there been any sort of counter data where you like, this sort of goes against our thesis, or has everything been aligned in the right direction?
But the key things that I noticed was the geochemistry, which is the soil on the surface, showed high associated elements, antimony, arsenic, with potentially gold underneath it, as well as gold, right up to 3 grams or 2.8 grams on the surface. So that was the first kind of pass. And then the geophysics showed the same scale of plumbing or structures as are over on the Getchell trend. So that was the next major event that took place. And then we did the gravity survey. We saw the nearby intrusion, which is not entirely necessary, but it's very common in big carbon systems. So from what I've seen on some key points, those layers have consecutively added. And the last most important part of that whole sequence is the drill holes found gold. And the key thing is not just hitting gold, but the disseminated gold that's not just in the veins, as Dan eloquently pointed out. That is critical mass for everybody, not just for myself, to see that occurring. And then it's oxide, and we did some metallurgy recently, and that's working too. So far, I don't think there's been a setback. Dan, I'll turn it to you. It's a better question for you, but those are the things that really drove home hard for me.
Yeah, no, I don't. And actually, I think it's actually very similar in the same respect to our other two discoveries before. Like hitting on the first holes, having the soils be a really good indication of the rock that you're looking for. I think it's very similar to our other discoveries where we really haven't experienced any real technical setbacks. I mean, we knew going in that we had post mineral cover, so obviously that's always a challenge, and that's what you need to be able to see through, and that's why geophysics is so important in Nevada. But the fact that we got our geophysics confirmed, what Justin and Ajit, the prospectors that we bought this project from, the fact that we could see through those post mineral covers with our geophysics and confirm the model. I think that's just as important as the drilling, because the drilling is great, but the thing is what you want to know is that you want to know that you can follow these structures out and that they have strike length, and that's what's going to get you into the million-plus ounce category. Hopefully, if it's like these other Carlin trends, the plus 10 million ounce category, that's what like I say, we're greedy. That's what we want. We want a huge system. And so I think we're pretty much seeing that. I can't think of any steps where, I guess maybe one step is we didn't see an obvious mineralization in the host rock that wasn't covered. So, we saw gold there, and we saw, gold in soils and rocks, but we didn't actually see a target right in those rocks. But if you think about it in retrospect, well, of course there would be a target in those rocks. If there had been, it would have been found already. So where we're finding
This is very similar.
yeah,
This is very similar to Sombrero story, Martin, that we just discussed a week ago, because we have a lot of volcanic cover. And what that cover Dan's talking about, it's what preserved the opportunity, why no one else has found it, why no one else saw it. Massive credit to Justin and Ajit being the early ones to see it. I know it wasn't easy for them to put this together and fund it before we came along, but they were brilliant to do what they did. And Dan took it with the team, and we've advanced it all together since. But yeah, this is luck. This is luck. This is perseverance. This is having the crazy ambition for big discoveries and new concepts that a lot of people weren't really that keen to go try, not in a bear market that we're just coming out of. It was capital was scarce, and these are real dollars to go and risk. And to get these little tea leaf speculations as you have a lot of cover was to see past it and guess on it like we did. We're getting rewarded for that, starting to, which is great.
Well, I noticed that smart, hardworking people tend to get lucky a lot. So it's funny how that works. With your drilling, how deep are you going on your drilling? Like, is there a big range in it, or is it pretty? Are all the holes going to be roughly the same depth, and how deep would that be?
I think in this next round of drilling, because we're going to be able to add some new pads on. And of course, part of the problem is when you're limited by the amount of pads you have and by the topography. Sometimes you have to drill deeper holes. But our current plan right now is it's not going to involve a lot of really deep drilling in the next phase. At some point, if you think about Turquoise Ridge and how that was discovered so much later than the oxide at Getchell, at some point you're going to want to take some really deep shots and see what kind of host rock is farther down there. And because all of these Carlin systems, they all started out as oxides, and they all started out with shallow holes. And it was only 30 years after Carlin systems were being mined that they started thinking, well, maybe we could drill into the sulfides. And that's what most companies are doing right now. Most companies are drilling out deeper sulfide resources. And that's eventually what will happen in this district as well. Eventually, I don't know if it's us that's going to be doing it, but at some point, they'll be looking for the sulfide roots to these oxide structures. So, but for right now, we we've got enough to do. We've got plenty to do without drilling the more expensive holes for now. We will be drilling some deeper holes, not at Otis, but we'll be probably drilling some deeper holes at Eden just to see what we've got there. But still, once again, not super deep. We try to keep things tight. We try to do the best to get the most bang for our buck. We value our shareholders and our investors and the hard work that Ivan does in getting us funded, and we try to get the most out of it at whatever stage we're at. So currently, we're not planning to drill to the center of the earth or anything like that. We've got
So a couple hundred meters initially for these
so they're going to be
holes?
like, the holes we've drilled so far have been averaged about 500 meters.
Okay.
And the plan for our subsequent holes, it's going to be an average of about 400 meters. So some will go 500, 600.
Yeah.
Some might only go 300.
Yeah.
And of course, an early stage exploration, you're never sure where you're going to cut the hole off. If you have a target depth of 400 meters and you're continuing to see good things, you're obviously going to keep that hole going.
With RC drilling, can you get that feedback, or because it's all ground up kind of when you pull it out? Can you sort of visualize the mineralization to know when to stop or when to keep going?
I started out working on RC rigs. That's when I was working for Newmont way back in 1989. Dating myself here, but essentially that's all we had was RC chips. You can get a lot of information about it. The one thing you can't get is you can't really get structural information, but
Okay.
you're still looking at decent sized chips. You're looking at
Yeah.
decent sized chips, and so you can see whether or not you have alteration in them. And so that's mainly what you need to see. What you need to see to stop drilling is you need to see the lack of alteration. You need to see fresh rock, and you usually want to do a couple of runs into your fresh rock to really know that you're out of your altered gold-bearing rock.
We do need to wrap it up here. We're at an hour. What kind of land are your projects on?
It's all BLM land.
Okay.
So, and everything that we looked at today, everything we have, everything we own is actually on multiple use ground, just regular BLM ground. We have nothing that's in Forest Service land or in any kind of stricter designation. So we'll be playing by the same rules that most people do who are, drilling on regular multiple use BLM ground.
And I presume BLM is being very facilitative of the whole process, quick turnaround, very responsive on information and permitting and so forth.
Yes, and that's actually another place that Kinross, and thanks so much to Josh Ellis and Patty there, Capistrand, who work here and work in Reno. They've done a lot of permitting lately, and so they've been able to give us a lot of tips on that. And we've hired a overall permitting agency or a company, SRK, sort of all things geologic service company, but they have a really experienced crew for permitting and for just monitoring the process. We've met the BLM agents that we're working with, and they've also been very helpful. And so, we're expecting the project to go smoothly. We will do our part, and the BLM will do their part, and we're hoping to get everything permitted in the timelines that we're expecting.
All right. And can you just quickly review, let's say for the next 6 months, the expected catalyst or milestones we should be looking for? And I mean mainly in terms of when you expect to get some drills turning, maybe when some first rough time frame of when we could expect to hopefully see some assay results back, and just give us a bit of a rundown on that briefly.
Yeah, we were actually right now, just yesterday, we received our first bid from the RC company, and we're expecting to receive maybe one or two more bids. And so we're going to look and see, decide which company that we want to go with. We'll need to write the drill contract. Then we'll be pretty much ready to go after that. We have submitted just our notice of intent. We've submitted the additional couple of drill pads that we want to put in. We're still under the 5-acre disturbance, which is that's what you could permit with the notice of intent. And so, once they look at that and approve that, and once we've selected the drill company, we'll be ready to go. So I'm hoping we're drilling by maybe the 3rd or 4th week of March. I don't think it's too optimistic to at least to aim for that. There's always something, it can always be something logistical that might crop up, but for the most part, that's what we're aiming for. And so in that case, April could be full of surprises, hopefully good surprises, because we'll be having it's not like we're going to put out the results of every single individual hole. We'll be putting out a news release every 3 daes, right? So
it depends what you drill. If you drill a market hole, you put it out. Right. If you drill more of the same, you couple it so there's more meaningful with it. But March drilling, April results starting, maybe 3rd week of April. It's 2 to 4 weeks for assays roughly. And so we'll have a lot of information on that, Martin, next week. There's a news flow coming out with the drill plan. You'll see where we're going to start drilling. And but we're funded next week. We don't need to do a financing. The warrant thing is working for us. And we're drilling a few weeks later, and results start coming out in 3rd week of April. It's game on, and we're on our way. And as Dan said, if you hit the big one, it comes out individually. Hopefully there's a lot of those, but if not, you do them in groups, right? We'll see how it goes. But there's some exciting targets, and just to get the drills running again that's where the money's made, and we can't wait for that.
Any final words before we wrap it up here? Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm just as you can see, I'm so excited. I'm blanking out my camera, but I would just say I'm really, really happy to be working with Ivan again, because I think the luck I've had, I'm not sure if it's my luck or his luck. So I think having both of us together again is a huge. It makes me really happy, and I think the results are going to show.
Well, Dan's the PhD geologist on this call, and I've done very well by him. So have many investors, and seeing you back at it, Dan, with the energy and the drive and the focus and the excitement has got me very excited. So it's an honor to be working with you again as well. Thank you so much, Martin, for the interview. Really appreciate it. Exciting time, pivotal time in the company, as you'll see in the next few weeks as we resume drilling, but we might have a big one, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you for making it. Ivan, thank you. You're in the middle of the Red Cloud conference that's coming right before the PDAC, so I really appreciate you squeezing us in here from the hotel lobby, it looks like there. So have a great day, have a great conference, and looking forward to the news flow. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care now.